Hey everyone! Today we're exploring another chilling and disturbing case. If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay engaged. It really means a lot. I truly appreciate it. Now, take a deep breath and let's dive in.
A lavish Dubai wedding, a $50 million life insurance policy, and a bride who would become a widow before sunrise. What really happened inside that Sydney penthouse suite? Was it love, betrayal, or a deadly competition for fortune? Ahmed Al-Mansoori was the charming businessman from one of Dubai's wealthiest families. His bride, Leila Hassan, was a 28-year-old Australian of Lebanese descent, a beauty with ambition who had finally found her Dubai prince. Together, they embodied power, wealth, and glamour. But the truth was far more sinister. Just weeks before the wedding, Ahmed quietly signed a massive $50 million life insurance policy, with his new wife as the sole beneficiary. But investigators would later uncover a shocking detail. Leila had convinced Ahmed to sign a mirrored policy on her life too, again naming Ahmed as the beneficiary. Each spouse believed they were in control of the ultimate scam, but neither realized they were both being set up. On the night of their $5 million Dubai wedding celebration, the couple boarded a private jet to Sydney for their honeymoon. By midnight, they were in a penthouse overlooking Sydney Harbour. By 3:17 a.m., hotel security heard screams. Minutes later, Leila stumbled into the lobby, her wedding dress torn, her hands covered in blood, claiming Ahmed had attacked her. But upstairs, Ahmed's body told a different story. He had been stabbed 9 times with a knife from their wedding cake set. Leila insisted it was self-defense, but detectives noticed inconsistencies. The lack of defensive wounds, her calm demeanor, and the fact that she had already contacted someone before calling security. Someone she desperately didn't want the police to know about. Within hours, her phone would reveal the unthinkable. Secret messages to a lover back in Dubai, plotting Ahmed's death, and how they would split the $50 million payout. But investigators would soon discover something even darker. Because Ahmed had been plotting her death that very same night. And he had left behind a recording that would change everything. Hours into the investigation, police stumbled upon a chilling discovery. Ahmed had been secretly recording conversations in the days leading up to the wedding. On one of those recordings, his voice was clear, calm, and terrifying. He said, "She won't survive the honeymoon. By tomorrow, I'll be a rich man." What detectives now realized was that this was never a one-sided plot. Ahmed had intended to murder Leila on their wedding night and cash out her $50 million policy. But Leila had gotten to him first. The bride and groom were locked in a deadly game of betrayal, each planning the other's funeral before the ink on their marriage certificate had even dried. Leila's phone revealed her co-conspirator, a secret lover in Dubai. Their messages were cold, calculated, and dripping with greed. They spoke about the night, about the insurance payout, and about starting a new life together once Ahmed was gone. But when police traced the messages, they discovered something that shocked them even more. This lover was not just any man. He was someone tied directly to Ahmed's own family. Had Ahmed's murder been a crime of passion? Or was it part of an even bigger betrayal? One that reached into his powerful Dubai family? Detectives now wondered. Was Leila just a manipulative wife? Or had she been a pawn in a dangerous family conspiracy worth $50 million? And when Ahmed's family arrived in Sydney to confront Leila, what they revealed would tear this case wide open. When news of Ahmed's death reached Dubai, his family wasted no time. Within days, his brother, uncles, and legal representatives were on the first flight to Australia. But their mission wasn't just grief. They came armed with lawyers, money, and secrets. In closed-door meetings with detectives, Ahmed's family revealed something investigators hadn't expected. They claimed Ahmed had confided to them before the wedding, warning that Leila wasn't who she appeared to be, that she had lured him into marriage under false pretenses. And, most shocking of all, that she was already romantically involved with someone within their own extended family. Detectives dug deeper. The mystery lover on Leila's phone wasn't just a random outsider. It was Ahmed's own cousin Khalid, a man who had attended the wedding and smiled in family photos, standing just a few steps away from the groom. To Ahmed's relatives, it was the ultimate betrayal. His wife and his cousin plotting his death together. But the family's accusations raised even more questions. If Khalid was involved, was Ahmed truly the only target? Or was this about seizing control of something even bigger? His inheritance, his company shares, his family's empire? For investigators, it became clear. Ahmed's murder wasn't just a marital betrayal. It was part of a much larger game of power, greed, and blood ties. And then detectives received a tip. A hidden bank account in Sydney, under Leila's name, containing millions. Money that should not have existed. Where did it come from? And who else was involved? When detectives traced Leila's phone, they found more than secret love messages. They uncovered a bank account in Sydney, registered under her name, holding almost $5 million. This was not wedding money. This was not part of the couple's known finances. And yet, it had been deposited just weeks before the wedding, from an offshore account linked directly to Dubai. Investigators followed the trail. What they discovered was shocking. The account had been funded by none other than Khalid, Ahmed's cousin, the very man accused of being Leila's secret lover. To police, this was no longer just about jealousy or passion. It looked like Khalid had bankrolled the entire scheme. When confronted, Leila claimed the money was a wedding gift from Khalid, nothing more. But prosecutors argued it was advance payment, a down payment for murder. The jury heard the messages between Leila and Khalid, describing Ahmed as a problem, and the insurance payout as their new beginning. The evidence painted a chilling picture. This wasn't just a crime of opportunity. It was a premeditated financial assassination. But here's where the story twists even darker. Some investigators believed Ahmed's death wasn't only about greed. They suspected a power struggle within his family itself. Had Khalid used Leila as a pawn to eliminate his cousin? Not just for the insurance, but to gain control of the Al-Mansoori family empire? And if so, who else in the family knew? And then came the biggest shock yet. Surveillance footage from inside the Sydney penthouse, recorded just hours before Ahmed's death. Footage that showed all three of them together. Ahmed, Leila, and Khalid. But what really happened in that room? Investigators thought they had the case figured out. A bride, a lover, and a $50 million plot. But when they obtained surveillance footage from the Sydney penthouse suite, the entire investigation shifted. At 11:43 p.m., just hours before Ahmed's death, cameras captured a shocking scene. Khalid, Ahmed's cousin, arriving at the honeymoon suite. Inside, the footage showed all three, Ahmed, Leila, and Khalid together. At first, there were smiles, drinks, and laughter. But within minutes, the atmosphere turned tense. Ahmed was seen pacing, pointing, raising his voice. Leila stood between them, trying to calm the argument. The recording had no audio, but one thing was clear. This was not a random visit. This was a meeting that spiraled out of control. A hotel staff member later testified that she overheard shouting from a suite. A man yelling in Arabic, another voice accusing, and a woman screaming, "Stop, he knows!" Just hours later, Ahmed was dead. The footage threw the case into chaos. If Khalid was inside the suite that night, was Leila truly the sole killer? Or had Khalid delivered the final blow? The prosecution argued that Leila alone had wielded the cake knife. But defense lawyers seized on the footage, claiming it proved Khalid was the real mastermind, the hidden hand behind the murder. The jury was now divided. Was this a wife murdering her husband for money? A cousin betraying his own bloodline? Or a conspiracy where both were guilty, but only one would take the fall. And then, detectives uncovered something that changed everything. A second surveillance recording, one hidden inside the penthouse bedroom. Footage that revealed exactly how Ahmed spent his final minutes alive. When investigators examined the penthouse suite, they uncovered something chilling. A hidden camera, discreetly installed in the bedroom chandelier. It wasn't part of the hotel system. Someone had deliberately placed it there to record what happened behind closed doors. What it captured was disturbing. The footage begins with Ahmed and Leila in their wedding clothes, the champagne still flowing. Khalid is there too, sitting close to Leila. The laughter fades quickly. Ahmed is seen slamming his fist on the table, pointing at his cousin, shouting. Leila tries to calm him, but then she suddenly moves closer to Khalid. Ahmed shoves him. Khalid shouts something back. The love triangle was no longer a secret. It was exploding in real time. According to body language experts who reviewed the footage, Ahmed appeared to threaten them both. He grabbed the ceremonial cake knife, waving it in rage. But in a shocking twist, the next moment showed Khalid restraining Ahmed from behind, while Leila picked up the very same knife. The footage cut in and out, but what remained clear was this. Ahmed fell to the ground. Leila moved forward, and in a frantic blur of motion, the knife was plunged into his chest. Not once, not twice, but 9 times. After the attack, the camera showed Leila pacing, crying, smearing blood on her gown. Khalid left the suite minutes later through a side door, disappearing from the hotel unnoticed. At 3:17 a.m., Leila finally stumbled into the lobby, screaming that her husband had fallen. What she didn't know was that every move had been recorded. But when detectives confronted Khalid with the footage, his response was not denial. Instead, he dropped a bombshell that stunned investigators and turned suspicion back on Leila in the most shocking way yet. When confronted with the hidden bedroom footage, investigators expected Khalid to deny everything. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. Khalid admitted he had been in the suite. He admitted restraining Ahmed. But then came the twist. He claimed he was saving Leila's life. According to Khalid, Ahmed had flown into a violent rage, threatening to kill Leila when he discovered her affair. Khalid said he intervened only to protect her, and that Leila's stabbing was an act of self-defense. Khalid painted himself as the protector, the cousin who stepped in to stop a murder. But prosecutors saw something far more sinister. A man rewriting the script, throwing his lover under the bus to save himself. Because when detectives replayed the footage, it didn't match Khalid's version. He hadn't stopped the fight. He had pinned Ahmed down. And while Ahmed screamed, Khalid watched as Leila drove the knife into him again and again. The footage turned Khalid and Leila from partners into enemies. Each accused the other of masterminding the plan. Each insisted they were manipulated. But investigators knew one thing for certain. This was no simple crime of passion. It was a conspiracy gone wrong, fueled by greed, lust, and betrayal. And when Ahmed's financial records were unsealed in court, another shocking layer of the scheme was revealed. Because Ahmed himself had been planning to kill them both. When investigators finally gained access to Ahmed's private financial records, they expected to see his empire, his debts, and his new marriage policies. What they didn't expect was a hidden trust, secretly established in Australia, designed to activate only in the event of Leila's death. In his secret will, Ahmed had left nothing to Leila. Not the penthouse, not his fortune, not a single cent. Instead, everything was redirected to his younger brother back in Dubai. The life insurance policies Ahmed had signed? They were never meant to pay Leila. He had already changed the beneficiaries without her knowledge. And then came the final piece. Detectives found voice memos Ahmed had recorded days before the wedding. In them, he calmly described Leila as a liar, a thief, and a threat. He spoke of her affair with Khalid, her manipulation, her hunger for money. And then, in chilling detail, he outlined a plan to make sure she would not survive the honeymoon. Ahmed had already set the wheels in motion. He told a cousin in Dubai, "By the time this is over, they'll both be gone, and I'll be free." It was the ultimate betrayal. While Leila and Khalid plotted to kill him, Ahmed was secretly plotting to kill them both. But the trap failed, and Ahmed never lived to see his plan unfold. When the recordings were played in court, the room fell silent. The victim was no longer an innocent groom. He was a conspirator in his own death. A man who had tried to play the game, but lost. The jury now faced an impossible question. When everyone was plotting against everyone, who was truly guilty of murder? And just when it seemed the case had reached its breaking point, one final witness stepped forward with a testimony that would change everything. Just when the prosecution and defense had reached a deadlock, the courtroom doors opened and a new witness entered. She was a former hotel employee, a young woman who had worked in the Sydney penthouse the night of the wedding, and what she claimed to have seen would change the entire case. According to her testimony, she had been asked to bring champagne to the suite around midnight. When she entered, she claimed Ahmed was agitated, pacing the room. Leila was crying, and Khalid was whispering something in her ear. But it was what happened next that shocked the court. The witness said Ahmed had pulled her aside and quietly asked her for help, telling her, "They are trying to kill me." The testimony painted Ahmed not as the aggressor, but as the cornered prey. It suggested that both Leila and Khalid were already working together that night, and that Ahmed had sensed the end was near. Leila's lawyers immediately attacked the witness's credibility. They claimed she had been paid off by Ahmed's powerful family, desperate to protect their reputation. But prosecutors insisted her story matched the timeline. The shouting, the broken champagne glass, the frantic pacing captured on camera. And then came the most chilling detail. The witness swore she had seen Leila holding the cake knife hours before the attack, stroking the blade in silence. With the witness's testimony, the jury's perception began to shift. No longer was this a tangled triangle of equal guilt. Attention turned sharply back to Leila, the bride in blood. But the trial was far from over, because the defense had one final card to play, a revelation so explosive, it could overturn everything. Now, the defense will expose a secret so dark. It may prove that Ahmed's murder wasn't just about greed, lust, or betrayal. It may have been something far more disturbing. The defense promised a revelation that would turn the case upside down. And when their moment came, they delivered. Leila's lawyers claimed that Ahmed's behavior on the night of the wedding was not just paranoia, nor rage. They argued he was suffering from a psychological disorder, one that made him violent, controlling, and obsessed with domination. They introduced private medical reports, never before seen, suggesting Ahmed had been under psychiatric evaluation in Dubai, documents his powerful family had worked hard to bury. The defense painted Ahmed not as the victim, but as a predator, a man who lured Leila into a trap, who intended to destroy her, and who had a history of manipulation and abuse hidden from the public eye. To the jury, it was a chilling twist. Had Ahmed been playing both sides, manipulating his wife and cousin, only to lose control of the game he himself had created? After months of testimony, weeks of evidence, and endless scandal, the jury withdrew. 32 hours later, they returned with their decision. Leila Hassan, guilty of second-degree murder. Not cold-blooded execution, not self-defense, but a deadly crime fueled by greed and betrayal. She was sentenced to life in an Australian prison, with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Khalid, despite the messages, despite the secret account, walked free. Insufficient evidence, the jury ruled. He returned to Dubai a free man, his role in the conspiracy forever shrouded in doubt. To this day, Many believe he was the true mastermind, leaving Leila to take the fall. In the end, the $50 million scam destroyed them all. Ahmed, the groom who plotted his own wife's death. Leila, the bride who stabbed her way into prison. And Khalid, the cousin who betrayed his own blood, walking away unpunished. What began as a fairy tale wedding ended as a nightmare of greed, lust, and betrayal. A marriage sealed not with love, but with blood. And it leaves us with one question that may never be answered. Who was the real victim? And who was the real mastermind?
What are your thoughts on this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more stories, where each case isn't just about crime, but also offers a lesson for life.